Okay, now we're going to start. As always, my goal is to realistically shoot for about 15 minutes. That's just the way I like to do it. But what I want to talk about tonight is, and I strongly recommend, there's some things that I'm going to throw at you that you might want to write down. And I think you should do that anyway. I remember learning years ago, probably 25, 30 years ago, I was watching a guy speak at an event that I was at, and he was making between $4 to $6 million a year. And that was like 30 years ago, literally. And he said he was talking to people about taking notes, and he said, what goes through you sticks to you. Think about this. If you're reading a book, imagine if you took a piece of paper and actually kept notes while you were writing. Nobody does that. Audio programs take notes while you're writing. You can put on Audible, you can put clips and bookmarks. That's not the same. When you write stuff down, what goes through you sticks to you. And what happens over years, because ultimately everybody's goal is what could be classified as self-actualization. That is self-actualization is something that probably 1% of the population ever achieves in terms of really finding out what your true capability is. And even in that case, people only scratch the surface, because I've said it a ton of times that we live like we have like 100 lifetimes of potential, which really fits in what I'm going to talk about. So what I'm going to talk about, if I had a theme for this, it would be titled The Art of Simplification. Okay, that is truly, everybody knows this is true. This is what we all need to do with our lives, because we all have 24 hours every single day, 1,440 minutes, and well over 30 years. I've kept a journal where I break down every single hour. And if you were to actually write down in advance, the way that I talked about last week, the idea of putting the rocks in the jar first, as opposed to having a glass full of sand and then trying to put rocks in it, then you all of a sudden now do things you wouldn't do. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain something. I found out, I'm sure that there's somebody on this call does not realize that, I wrote a book years ago that was all about basically, it's called the 365-Day Challenge. I'm tempted to retitle it the One-Day Challenge, because it's way more relevant than the 365-Day Challenge. Anybody can master today. But here's the key to that. Today is all you ever have. And every single person, if they're honest with themselves, they know they are not literally putting in what they should be putting in or what they could be putting in to get to where they want to go. But yet most people aren't where they want to be in life, nor will they be in 5 years. So here's an interesting thing. Years ago, I decided to run some marathons. And I'm talking, I was like 42 years old, never run a marathon in my life. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to take the smart approach to this. I'm literally, because I didn't have the conditioning, the shape to do that kind of stuff. So I just focused on running to the end of the street. Okay. And then every day I focused on increasing. That's what I did. And this is why I call this the art of simplification, because I took the time frame that I had to train, and then I divided by how many days I had before I wanted to start this marathon streak. And it became stupidly simple. I mean, it was just like, I thought to myself, anybody can do this, barring physical handicaps. But there's people that will be like, I've got hip issues, I've got this, I've got that. But the human body is absolutely incredible in terms of what is capable. Now, one of the eye-opening things that I had with marathons, realize that there's a handful of people that are up in front, and they're in it to win it. They want to race, they want to run. That's how people hurt themselves. That's how people get injured, because they're going so fast. See, most people, 90% of people that actually do the marathon thing are literally just focusing on the completion. Marathons, official marathons, will give you between 6 to 7 hours to complete the marathon. So you can break that down by how many miles per hour and then just focus on a pace, but you still have to. If anybody in this call was given $1 million in cash, if they ran 26.2 miles tomorrow, okay, first of all, if they weren't offered the cash, they'd be, no, I can't do it, I can't do it. But if the $1 million of cash was laid right out in front of them, they would look at that and go, okay, I can do this. I'm just going to go really slow. But let's say you did it. If you did it, what would you feel like the next day? The next day, you wouldn't be able to walk. Okay, you would literally be walking funny. Let's just put it that way. You'd be chafing really bad. There'd be a lot of bad experiences. So here's the thing. Break it down to a simplistic perspective. You take it down just like the idea of reading a book. If a person's goal is to read a book a week, okay, or let's say a book a month, that's basically about 10 pages a day. You take how many pages are in the book, divide it by 30. If you want to read a book a week, then you divide it by 7. That is the art of simplification. And the takeaway out of this that everybody has to comprehend is the fact that when you do this, not if, but when you do this towards any goal in your life, what you will find is you then start doing activities that move you closer to your goal that you wouldn't be doing had you not set the goal. That's the magic of this. That's why it's so true that the only limit to what you can accomplish is your imagination and your level of commitment to making it real. That's why that is such a valid statement. Okay, so now here's what I want to throw at you. So I ended up doing that and I ran a marathon. And the next day I ran a marathon. And the next day I ran a marathon. And the next day I ran a marathon. I had a blog post on it. I was sending out tweets like every mile. And I went 100 days in a row because I wanted to bring out the awareness that literally one day at a time you can do virtually anything if you take it one day at a time. Okay. And as a result, that was kind of cool because I had people that were eventually emailing me from different parts of the world that told me that, oh yeah, I went to Amazon and found your book and that book completely changed my life. I found myself getting off track of setting goals, and this broke it down to where it became stupidly simple, really, really simple. And that was the whole purpose and objective of the book. So that was the idea. And then, I accomplished my objective. I did what I wanted to do. So let's fast forward 10 years. Here's the fun part about this. 10 years later, because it is 10 years ago now. 10 years ago. That's how time goes. You will all see this in your life. All of a sudden, you're going to blink and there goes 10 years. But see, I haven't run a marathon in 10 years. And all of a sudden, I see this post on, I think somebody posted something on Facebook or something that had to do with the La Crosse marathon where I live. And it was coming up on May 7th. And I instantly like, oh, I could do that. And it's like, it's literally, when I looked at it, it was 37 days out. So all I did, if I was consistently running maybe 3 to 5 miles a day, I just took the difference of 23 miles, divided it by the difference from what I was already running towards what the goal was, came out to be like 0.3 of a mile a day. And then I forget everything else. I only just focus on that. But now I find myself running when I normally would not run. This is your takeaway. This is what you have to get out of this. And it's like, I could literally not run for the next month. And I know with every fiber of my being, I would complete the marathon. I would start and then I would finish, but I would be hurting the next day because I haven't run of the distance to my knowledge of more than 10 miles in the last 10 years. So that'd be the dumb way of doing it. So it could be done, but it'd be the dumb way of doing it. But I would rather do it where it's kind of like looking at your life. Our goals, and this you should write down, your goals you should rewrite every day should include words, not just like Aventador LP 700 or a castle or a vacation home or zero debt or whatever else. It should include words like energy and longevity, okay? Because ultimately everybody wants energy and longevity. Okay, let's just say a person doesn't make it to 100. If you don't make it to 100, my question is, what if you do? How many people end up reaching the age of 73, 74, 75? You look at them, they look like they're 80 or 90. I mean, literally. So now they're going to spend the next 25 years of their life that they're blessed with that. Here's what's ironic about this. Basically, my wife's grandfather's birthday is tomorrow, ironically, his 103rd birthday. And he still is not in a nursing home. So, I mean, it's like, what if that happens? Wouldn't you rather not suffer at the back end? Which affects, what do you have to balance out? Proper sleep, proper diet, proper exercise. Okay, that's not even getting into the whole Tibetan book of living and dying where it talks about reincarnation and karma and how we act in our lives affect our next life, just getting into this lifetime, okay? So it's like you want to be able to really have not just the years, but the life in the years. It'll also impact a person's ability to potentially live longer. I had the blessing of attending a funeral not long ago, and I've seen people that pass, and it's like they aren't going to see them grandkids because one of the daughters, no, it's actually one of the grandkids who's pregnant now going to have another daughter that person will never see. And I firmly believe that person, I know his lifestyle, and as a result, it's just like the iron law of the universe is the law of cause and effect. You take specific actions, you get a specific result. So people shorten up their life, or potentially they're going to live long, but they're going to be miserable the whole time. So here's what I want to get at with this. This is where this comes into context for you guys more than you know, and I really want you to embrace this concept. I'm going to give you a quote from a book that's outdated. I probably read this 25 years ago, but it still applies today. The numbers are going to be a little inaccurate, I promise you, because of inflation. But the stats are not different. Okay, so if you've ever heard of Dave Ramsey, this is a good man if you want to learn about money. Okay, Dave Ramsey. And anyways, here's the quote. He says, and this is at that time, 87% of Americans at the age of 65 have less than a $6,800 net worth. Okay, so even if that's adjusted for inflation, it ain't shit. Okay, so according to the USA Today, 97% of people at the age of 65 cannot write out a check for $600. And look around you, that's real. So, I mean, it's like you realize that like 2 billion people on the planet can't read. Just because everybody you know can read doesn't mean 2 billion can't. So, I mean, these are just real numbers and big statistics. So, out of it, here's the stats: out of a typical 100 people, 5 are still working, 36 are dead, 54 are dead broke, or at least earning far less than they were employed. 4 are well off, 1 person is wealthy. At the end of the time, 1 out of every 100 people has something to show for it. And somehow people just spend their life and they're like playing Monopoly where they pass go and always collect the $200, but they never buy any property. That makes absolutely no sense if you understand the game of Monopoly, but that's how people go through their life. So this is where this ties into this oversimplification thing, because I have read book after book after book. Some of them going back, some of these writings go back a couple thousand years, where they talk about like The Richest Man in Babylon, a great book. If you've never read it, you must read it. Okay, but they talk about it's been taught for years. Okay, you take 10% of what you make, and that should basically be invested. Ideally, the best way to do this is called paying yourself first. Because if a person pays the electric bill, if they pay their car insurance, if they buy food, if they have entertainment, if they're buying clothes, you're giving the money to somebody else. So ultimately, these stats don't change. Most people don't take 10% of their income. Ideally, the proper formula, 10% should remain in cash. So imagine having $50,000 to $60,000 in cash. Is that going to affect your state of mind? One of the videos that I did maybe a couple months ago talked about cash flow disposition and how also it affects your stress or lack of stress, all these types of things. So in the reality, though, it falls under the classification that today is all you ever have. That gets rewritten in my journal every single day. Today is, and I underline is. You hear the saying that today is the first day of the rest of your life. The reason that's a powerful statement is because it's so ridiculously true. Today is the first day of the rest of your life. So the reality is, if you're not doing it, I kind of when I was out running, I told myself, it's like, you're either in condition to run a marathon today or you're not. That's all there is to it. And if you're not, what are you doing about it? So, I mean, that's the reality. So then I can adjust it, because that affects I remember Wayne Dyer talking about running 7 miles a day for like 30 years, and the guy never had the sniffles. It affects your immune system. It affects your white blood cells. There's so many things, but it also, if you succeed in any one goal, what it does is it affects your other goals. The cool thing is, I shared with my daughter, she didn't sign up for the marathon, but she instantly, while I was talking to her, got on her phone and signed up for the 5K. Mentioned it to my son, who lives at about an hour and a half north of me. He signed up for the 5K up in Eau Claire and the one in La Crosse. So, I mean, it's kind of cool, because now if you set a goal, it has that ripple effect and affects other people. So here's what I want to go with this. Okay, you have to remember that essentially 70% of the world lives on like $2 a day. Okay, and I don't care if the numbers are right or wrong, or if they're close, or if they're off a little bit. We all know this is reality. But yet in the meantime, what? We get too comfortable. People are just like, oh, I got stuff covered. But I promise you, people don't, because things happen. Cars break down. Stuff happens with people's houses in terms of like plumbing breaks, whatever, you name it. Things happen in life. And most people aren't prepared for something. I remember reading a stat somewhere where it's a ridiculous amount, an insane high percentage of people are like 3 paychecks away from homelessness. I mean, but then, so why aren't they? Because they have credit, they have debt, they have credit cards, which compounds and builds up and builds up. This is where it applies to you. If you're not literally saving 10% every single day of my life, in my top right-hand corner of my journal, it says the date, and then it's written the day. And then underneath that, the very first thing in the top right, remember the top left page, it says gratitude and goals, where I include things like energy and longevity and peace of mind and living fully in the now, not just the material things. It falls under the spiritual category too. But on the top right-hand corner, I put down PYF, pay yourself first. And then it inspires me to write that little line in the center. You either do it or you don't. And this stuff still motivates me the same way it motivated me 30 years ago. But then I break it down into two categories. 10% cash. So I just look at whatever I earned yesterday. Doesn't matter where the revenue, it could come off profits off trading accounts. It could come off anywhere revenue comes from. 10% of that is accounted for, and it's actually broken down into cash, and another 10% goes into investments. So here's the cool thing. because I do it that way, I open up my Cash App every single day. I got a kick of it because I remember I saw somebody posted something about Cash Apps only used for drug dealers and terrorism and stuff like that. But the point is, I will literally put 10% of whatever was made yesterday goes in there, because then I can convert it to Bitcoin and I can put it in an overseas trading account or an in-seas trading account, you name it. It doesn't matter. That money's being invested and put into work. But when you're doing that, okay, this is where this is key. This is where this is critical. Anybody who's ever done any trading in their life at all understands the number one mistake that everybody makes is they over leverage. They take too much risk. They want to get there now. They want to be there yesterday. That's where it becomes really easy to just shoot for 3 to 5% growth per day and then managing risk. So the rule is, and I rewrite this every single day, if I'm doing HFX trading, I'm only putting in one trade per trade idea. You don't understand, if you get a better entry, okay, that's still the same trade idea. So now if you put in 2 or 3 trades, you just went from 3% to 6% to 9%. And all of a sudden now, because the market's going to do what the market's going to do, and it runs the wrong way, and poof, just like that, there goes 10% of your account. So now all of a sudden you got to look back and say, okay, now you're going 3 steps forward, but 5 steps back, 3 steps forward, 5 steps back. This stuff is so easy if a person manages risk. Okay. But if you have that long-term mindset, how long does it take? You know, I've heard so many people talk about putting $500 in an account and then run it 3%, do 200 trading days in a year. And it comes out to a staggering 6-figure number that if you were making 3% a day, even if it was only $100,000, that's $3,000 a day. If you were taking out 1%, okay, that's basically $1,000 a day. Make 3, take out 1. That's $5,000 a week. That's $20,000 a month. And statistically speaking, in the state of Wisconsin, I'll go by that. In the state of Wisconsin, if you make over $800 a day, okay, that puts you in the top 5% of income in the state. You make $2,000 a day, you're in the top 1%. Okay, and that's a very current stat. I looked that one up. That is so incredible. So you're in the top 5% of people. And that's not even including, that's just the state. Forget about talking about third world countries. At that point, you're really, really wealthy. That's the idea. But the thing is that people don't do stuff about it. This is where a person literally has to say, okay, you either do it or you don't. And then you delegate. You put in your calendar no different than reading nonfiction, listening to audio programs, studying a foreign language. You should have time in there for studying FRX and studying time for studying HFX. And then you should have exercise time. You should also factor in rest. You put that in there, watch how the day goes by, then look how you feel. Because ultimately, success is nothing more than the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. Success isn't having the castle. Success isn't having the 8-figure trading account. It's the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. So now with everything that I said, I'm going to close up with this thought is ultimately everything I just said applies to everybody that I'm talking to. I promise you. But here, take it one step further. How does it apply to every single person you cross paths with? See, this affects me because that way, if they blow it off, I don't care. I'm still going to bring it up. I'm still going to, plant seeds in their mind because I'm focusing on 2 things. If you're not saving, I know dang well 5 years from now, they're going to be the same place financially, except stuff's going to happen. So they have to learn this stuff. Where else are you going to be able to go to make money work for you? We live in a time where it can be done. It can be done off of a phone, but that means a person has to put in the time because you're going to blink and a month goes by. And also, where'd that go? But then the growth hasn't taken place. But again, if you put time into something day in, day out, I don't care if it's learning Spanish. That's just the best metaphor that I can come up with. It's like all of a sudden now people are like, how are you so good at Spanish? Where are you from? I'm from Wisconsin. No, you're not. Yes, I am. But it's because you do it every single day. Repetition's the mother of skill. Like Ralph Waldo Emerson says, whatever you persist in doing gets easier. Not that the nature of the task has changed, but your ability to do has increased. So just write those down. Add that. Put the 10%, pay yourself first, and just do it. But then you now take the rest. That's what you use to pay bills. But then you take the other 10% and you invest. And you realize if a person has an account with only, let's say, $500 in, $500 with 10% is $50, 1% is $5. They only have to make $15. There's your 3%. But then when they hit their target, stop trading. You can have an account. I've seen it taught where you can have an account that's just set up purely for aggressive growth. But you have to have an account that's set up just for that 3%. And then just hit your target day after day after day. And you're going to go, oh my God, this is ridiculously simple. You don't get greedy, you don't aggressive, you become patient, you manage your risk. You don't all of a sudden start trying to chase trades. These are things that can be done. So you can take that, and that all ties in no different than the marathon mindset. No different than running a marathon in a month, because I promise you in 12 to 18 months, okay, we're either going to be here or we're not. But wouldn't it be nice to be in a position to where a person can have the ability to go where they want, when they want, with who they want, and actually have that freedom? Because you can have all the money in the world, but unless you're free, you're not, unless you're financially free, you're not free. That's really what it's all about, because in the end, you need to have time and money. So with that, does anybody have any questions, thoughts? Hey, thanks for posting that, Greg Jones. If there's no thoughts, I am going to close this one up, but just do that. Take that, write that, pay yourself first, put 10%. Just remember, simplify. That's the whole purpose of my message today. It's the art of simplification. And no matter how well you're doing it, trust me, it is something that you're never, ever going to get perfect. Every day is a chance to improve and get better and better and better. And then success becomes absolutely inevitable. On that note, I will say thank you for your time. And just remember, life is absolutely what you make it.